Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Sean. Today I'm doing another book haul, so let's not waste time. Let's get into it. First, I kind of want to get every book by this author I can find. It's Control by William Goldman. William Goldman, the author of The Princess Bride. I just really want to try reading every William Goldman book, in part because I love The Princess Bride so much, and I know all his other books are not going to be like The Princess Bride, but I really want to make sure William Goldman gets credit for what he's done, what he did, just because he's kind of most known as the author of The Princess Bride, and he did so many other novels and wrote so many screenplays to films. So William Goldman is kind of a must-buy, must-read author at this point, but to this point I have only actually read The Princess Bride. I do have the book Magic on my to-read list for this year, but anyway, just buying every William Goldman book whenever I find them. So Control by William Goldman. Oh, here's another William Goldman book, Soldier in the Rain. Nothing to say about it except it's a William Goldman book. Next, a top 1000 book off the 1000 Books to Read Before You Die list by James Mustich. It's Ignacio Salone. I don't know how to pronounce the name. Bread and Wine. So I'd never heard of this author before. When I got it, I asked the bookstore owner, I was telling him the books I got, and he was pretty intrigued about this one and kind of what he said about it. And I kind of stopped him short because I don't really want to know. He said this is basically an anti-fascist book. So then I went and I looked it up. And it's kind of interesting because Ignacio Salone, whatever his name is, there's like one side that says he is an anti-fascist writer in Italy, and the other side says that he is actually like a double agent, kind of like he was a fascist and he was portraying or claiming to be an anti-fascist because he was secretly working with the fascists. So it's just kind of interesting, like that two sides of the coin or whatever. So like, which was he? Who knows? One thing I did read is that like he was actually a communist. So it's kind of a dispute whether he was a communist who was secretly working with the fascists or whether he was like really against them. So curious to read it, and I don't really care so much like which side it was, which side he was on. I just kind of want to see how the book is, but I really have no expectations for it whatsoever. I'm glad it's a pretty short book. From a short book to a big one, it is William Styron, Sophie's Choice. So recently I got a signed book by William Styron. He is the author of several notable books. This is his book off the top 1000 list, but also he wrote The Confessions of Nat Turner, which was real controversial. This book was controversial as well. I did not remember why this book was controversial. I don't really want to know anything about books before reading them. But when I got this book, I was kind of mentioned to the bookstore owner, like, yeah, I heard something about the book is controversial. And of course he started saying like, yeah, so basically it's about the Holocaust and this woman has to make a choice to leave her kids or something, to leave her baby. And I'm just like, stop telling me about the book. But anyway, yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I'm really pessimistic about reading it because it's such a long book, but it is a top 1000 book, and I'm a little bit hopeful because I have a signed book by this author. So because of that, I want to like him a little bit more. But, ooh, it's such a long book. I don't know. Next is... Ooh, I just got this book recently. Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo. So in a recent video I did, I'll post it at the end of this video, I guess. I did a review of Spartacus by Howard Fast. And in that video I talk about how Howard Fast was blacklisted. And Dalton Trumbo was one of the guys who wrote the screenplay for the film Spartacus. And Dalton Trumbo was also blacklisted. And in that video, in the review for Spartacus, I mentioned, I kind of have sympathies or whatever to people who were blacklisted because I think the whole era of McCarthyism and stuff was bad and wrong and basically un-American, because basically it was kind of illegal in a way to be a communist, and people like lost their careers over claims that they were a communist, whether they were or not. And I just, I'm really opposed to that because I believe in free association. I believe you can be a member of whichever party or political group you want, provided you don't use force or commit violence. Otherwise, I don't really care what you believe. That is your right as an American. You could believe what you want. You could say what you want. You could march peacefully and stuff. So anyway, I'm pretty sympathetic toward, Dalton Trumbo for that reason, and curious to give it a read. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. These next two, when I saw them, I was kind of like, huh? But anyway, I think I saw this one first because I was shelving them. The Color of Money by Walter Tevis. So when I saw it, I was kind of like, is this just a novelization of the movie? Or is the movie actually based on a book? And then I think the next book I had to shelf, or maybe it was already on the shelves, I don't know. But it's The Hustler, also by Walter Tevis. And so anyway, I looked the author up after I saw these books, and I saw that indeed the films were based on the books. So it wasn't just novelization of the films, the films are based on the books. And so anyway, I really liked both of these films. I think early on, like when I was like, I don't know what, 9, 10 years old or whatever, The Color of Money was more the movie I watched. And then I really got into pool when I was like, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. And, I kind of took like pool lessons or whatever from like an old pool shark. And he really kind of talked a lot about The Hustler. And so eventually I found a copy of that movie, and I really liked that film. I have not seen it in years. The Hustler with Paul Newman. Anyway, that's definitely more my favorite movie now over The Color of Money. I don't know, there's just something better about The Hustler. I don't know. And also just the pool scenes. I don't know. I think it's just a better movie. So anyway, I really like books with movie adaptations. And since I like both of these movies, I'm really interested in reading the books. I'd be most interested, of course, in reading The Hustler. But I'm kind of guessing that the film more closely follows this book. Whereas I think The Color of Money might be a little bit different. I'm not sure because I just read something online and I didn't really read too much into it. But the main character, like Fast Eddie Money, I think is his name. I don't know if that's his last name. But what I read on the synopsis is that that character is actually like years later, he's kind of touring the country with Minnesota Fats, the character from the first book or movie, and I didn't read anything more about it, so I don't know if the Tom Cruise character is actually in this book or if it's just Minnesota Fats is in the book instead. I do not know. So curious to read it. I'm kind of guessing for that reason the book may be a bit different than the movie. I do not know, but I'll see. But anyway, I'm really excited to try these out, mostly of course starting with The Hustler, and see how it goes. Real high hopes for it though. Next, I was working at the bookstore, and the bookstore owner just kind of said one day like, "Hey Sean, do you want a Tim O'Brien book?" And I was like, "Is it signed?" And he's like, "No, but it's in this book." So anyway, of course I got it because I'm sure if you've seen my other videos, I've talked about Tim O'Brien a lot. I love Tim O'Brien. His book, The Things They Carried, is one of my favorite books of all time. And I have a lot of signed books by Tim O'Brien, so he's definitely a must-buy, must-read author. I've read most of his books, and I only had like 2 more books to read before getting this one. But yeah, I just had to get it because it's Tim O'Brien, but it's Dad's Maybe book by Tim O'Brien. So I think it's a non-fiction book, just, whatever. Kind of like just talking about, being a parent and whatever. One thing I think I did read about it, there is definitely a section on Vietnam, and he was talking about, It was really interesting to me. He was talking about like soldiers killed versus soldiers created. And basically, what he said, and I thought it was a real good point, is a lot of times, like the military will look at, like, especially at the time, they would look at kill loss ratios. So they would say, like, oh, we killed 20 enemies and we only lost one. So that's a 20-to-1 kill ratio. But what Tim O'Brien kind of points out, and I don't know if he like thought of this himself, or if he's just piggybacking on someone else who thought of this, but basically he talks about this thing called killer or soldiers created. And basically the way it goes is like, yeah, maybe you killed 20 people, but all of those 20 people, they have brothers and they have wives and they have children and stuff. So if you kill one person, you may be making soldiers out of 13 other people, because, like, hey, you just killed someone's best friend. You killed the father of 3 boys. You killed the husband of this woman, and maybe that woman has a brother, and now that brother will want revenge as well because you made his sister a widow, and just so on. He has parents, he has other brothers, he has friends, he has children, and so all of those people may become soldiers as well to get revenge. So that's kind of something just I briefly read about in this book, and that's really interesting to me, and I definitely think that's a true thing. So it should really caution people about war, because it's not just like, oh, once you kill the soldiers, the enemy soldiers, then they're done, they're removed from the battlefield. No, really, you may kill one only for 8 more to be inspired to fight because of that. So really interesting thing. So anyway, I am more intrigued to read it now, just reading that one little passage. So anyway, Dad's Maybe book by Tim O'Brien. It is not signed, however. These next books are all signed, though. Beginning with the smallest, and I just mean that kind of, physically it's small, but it's the 17 Traditions, signed by Ralph Nader. So I kind of felt I was lucky to find this one because I was shelving books, and I don't know why, but I had to pull out this book for some reason or another. And so I looked at it and I saw there's a little sign sticker there. So I was like, signed by Ralph Nader. And I knew he was a presidential candidate from like the 1990s, but I wasn't sure exactly which race, because I was kind of confusing him a little bit with Ross Perot, but I definitely knew of Ralph Nader. And also just like, I watch a lot of like Milton Friedman videos. Milton Friedman is a kind of a conservative right-wing economist, or he was a conservative right-wing, and he mentions Ralph Nader in several videos or whatever. And so anyway, when I saw this, I just thought I'd get it. Now, I actually looked up today, like, is Ralph Nader still alive? And so I checked, and I saw that, yes, he is still alive, and I think he's 91. So now that I looked that up, I probably put the kiss of death on him. So hopefully not. Sorry, Ralph Nader, if that happens. But yeah, so hopefully I don't put the kiss of death on him. Speaking of the kiss of death, the next book is Bill O'Reilly, Killing Lincoln. So signed book, just signed by Bill O'Reilly. I don't know so much what to say about this one. I guess I'll just say that I don't really like Bill O'Reilly now. I just do not care about him whatsoever. I don't like his politics from what I know now. I'm just not interested, and I even knew that when I saw this book. I was just like, I need to get it because it's signed Bill O'Reilly, but it's just like, I don't care. I don't like this dude. I don't want to read this book, but I'll get it anyway. Especially because it's Killing Lincoln, which I think is kind of like the most popular book in the series, or maybe this was like the first book in the series, because Bill O'Reilly has published several killing books, like Killing Jesus and Killing Patton and Killing JFK or whatever. I just really have no interest really in reading it. Maybe at some point I'll try just to see, but I definitely put this book like out of sight, out of mind. It's definitely not a treasured autograph, but I still had to get it when I saw it, but definitely not happy about it. And still speaking about The Kiss of Death, I don't know if this author is alive. I think they are. I'm pretty sure they are. But it's Michael Chabon. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing that name because I think the bookstore owner may have said it differently. But Michael Chabon, the Yiddish Policemen's Union. So the Pulitzer. I'm sure it's Pulitzer. Prize-winning author of The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, which is a book on the top 1,000 list, and I tried to read, and I just didn't really like it at all, of course. Now, I think I saw a signed book by Michael Chabon at the bookstore like a while ago, and I was kind of iffy about whether to get it because I was like, well, he is a top 1,000 author, but I just didn't like the book, so I don't really care, so I didn't get it. And so then I think it may have been sold, so I've kind of regretted it ever since. And whenever I'd walk by the C's section, I'd kind of check just to see if we have any Michael Chabon signed books, and we haven't. But then about, I don't know when, a few months ago, I looked and I saw this book on the shelf, or I don't know if I was shelving it or what. But yeah, I saw this book and I was kind of like, oh, I'm not actually sure if this was the signed book that we had or if this is a new book that we got. There's not a tag on the back, so that kind of suggests it is an older book because we're kind of tagging books now, unless he removed the tag. I don't know, there's a little bit of a sticky thing, so maybe it is a newer book. I don't know. But anyway, it's a signed Michael Chabon book, so I'm just glad to get it because I've always kind of regretted not getting it when I had the chance. Even though I didn't like The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, it's a top 1,000 book, so I was just like, well, eh. So when I saw it, I was like, well, I'm going to get it. Next, I got these books a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure which one to do first. Let's go with this one. Martin Cruz Smith, December 6th. Autographed copy, of course. All these books now are signed. Martin Cruz Smith is on the top 1,000 list for a book I believe was called Gorky's Park, or Gorky Park. And what's interesting about that one is that book is kind of set from like the Russian perspective. So like the protagonist is a agent or something in Russian law enforcement or the Russian intelligence agency. And I just think that's really interesting, reading a book from basically the Russian perspective, because usually in all these books, like, Russia and China are the enemies, they want to destroy the world. And I've thought for quite a while, I want to read a book where it's set from a Russian or Chinese character's perspective, and they are trying to stop like the evil Americans from destroying the world, because I think that's kind of a little bit more realistic. Like, if you look at like global news and all these like different bombings around the world, it's usually by the United States bombing all these countries. It's not like Russia and China are just bombing, all over Europe and Africa and the Middle East and the Americas. It's kind of the United States is the one blowing everything up. So I think it'd just be kind of funny and a little bit more accurate to have a book from the other side's perspective where it's trying to save the world from the Americans trying to destroy the world. Anyway, so I just thought that was interesting. This author wrote this book series or whatever about kind of this Russian character who's the protagonist. And I don't really think I liked Gorky Park too much, and I also think I read the second book in the series, which was called Polar Star. I liked it somewhat, but it wasn't really something I was really in love with. So it's just kind of like, well, I like parts of it. I like the idea, but it's not something like wholly that I love. But anyway, so when I saw a signed book by him, I was just like, well, I guess I'll get it. Next, this is a signed book that's actually been in the bookstore for like close to half a year now. And when I saw this book come in, I like immediately pulled it aside because I was like, ooh, I need to get this book. well, I guess I shouldn't really hide it now because, you know, whatever. But it's Zadie Smith, The Fraud. So Zadie Smith is the author of a top 1000 book called White Teeth. And I didn't really like that book too much, but I definitely saw that there was some ability. The writer had talent, even though, like, I didn't really like the book too much. I don't think I really liked the characters, but I saw that the writer definitely had some talent. But I liked it well enough that Zadie Smith was kind of a must-buy author if I could find a signed book by her. She wasn't good enough where I wanted to read another book by her, but she was good enough where I wanted to get a signed book by her if I could, just because I recognize, like, okay, I know she at least has some talent, and I'm unsure, like, how talented, just because I didn't really like that book, White Teeth, too much. But I know she has talent, so I kind of wanted to get a signed book by her. So when I saw this at the bookstore, immediately I was like, oh, pull this aside, I need to get it. I don't want to miss out on this. But then I saw the autograph and it just kind of looked like a weird autograph. And I was like, that's just a lame autograph. So I looked up Zadie Smith's autograph and it didn't look anything like this. It was like she wrote her name out like normal. And I was like, that does not look like Zadie Smith's signature. And so I just kind of thought about it and I like compared it to all the signatures I saw online and it did not look like Zadie Smith's signature. So I was like, you know, I just don't think that's her signature. That doesn't look like her signature. So I'm not going to buy this book. So I went ahead and let it go onto the shelves, and it's been on the shelves for several months. And so I kind of took another look at it the other day, and I don't know what exactly got into my mind to try this, but I was just kind of looking at it and I was like, it doesn't look like her autograph. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. I got an idea. Big brain moment. I flipped the book around and I looked up her autograph and it looked pretty much like that. So basically, for some reason, the autograph in the book is upside down. So that's why it didn't look like her signature. So once I flipped the book upside down and looked at the signature again and compared it to other signed books by her, it was like, oh, this does pretty much look like her signature. So that's it. It was just signed upside down. So I don't know if that like makes this book like almost more valuable because it's like a signed book that's kind of a goof. It's signed upside down. So I don't know if the person just took the book up to Zadie Smith to sign it and, you know, they're holding it just like normal and they just hold it across the table and Zadie Smith signs it, but it's signed upside down because of that. So anyway, I just thought that's kind of funny. So I don't know, I just enjoyed that. That kind of makes a little bit of a story to this book. Like, it's signed upside down. And I didn't realize that until I turned the book upside down. So anyway, I just thought that's pretty funny. That's amusing to me. And so once I realized like, oh, it's signed upside down, that's why. Then I went ahead and got the signed book. Last of all, when I saw this book, I was kind of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I think the way I figured out about this book or whatever is because I was working and one of the people who works at the bookstore said like, hey, Sean, do you want a signed book by this author? And I was like, what? Because, you know, I have a reputation, of course, now at the bookstore. Everyone knows that, you know, I like signed books. So I've told this other guy who works at the bookstore, like, hey, if you see any real cool signed books, let me know before you put them on the shelves or whatever, or before you, like, put them up for sale. And so this guy came up to me during work and was like, hey, we got a signed book by this guy. Do you want it? And I was like, yes. And right away I thought like, okay, this is going to cost like at least $500, but you know, I need it. And since I work there or whatever, I got a hefty discount. So I paid just $15 for this book. In fact, this is the only book out of all of these books in this video that I paid for. So for all of these books in this video, I paid a grand total of $15. And so anyway, that book is Arthur C. Clarke, 2001, Odyssey 2. So, Arthur C. Clarke is like one of the grandfathers or godfathers or whatever of science fiction. I always thought it was kind of like Ray Bradbury would be like the god of science fiction, but I've actually kind of found out that there's three other authors instead who are thought of as like the godfathers or whatever, grandfathers, I forget what the exact word is, of science fiction. So there's Arthur C. Clarke, there's Robert A. Heinlein, and who's the other one? Oh, it must be Isaac Asimov. So anyway, it's just kind of crazy to me that Arthur C. Clarke would kind of be considered in a tier above Ray Bradbury. So it's kind of like those are the big three: Arthur C. Clarke, Robert A. Heinlein, and Isaac Asimov. So it's really cool getting a signed book by one of those guys. I didn't really ever expect to get a signed book by Arthur C. Clarke, even though I've never read him before. I just know that he is one of the masters of science fiction. And so anyway, I'm glad that it's part of the 2001 series, even though it's not the first book in the series. It's Odyssey 2, and of course the first book is more popular or whatever. But still, a signed book by Arthur C. Clarke, and I only paid $15 for it. I also do think I have another Arthur C. Clarke book somewhere, Childhood's End, which I think is the only book on the top 1000 list by Arthur C. Clarke. I don't think 2001 A Space Odyssey is on the top 1000 list. I'll have to check. Clarke. Oh, nope, just Childhood's End. That's the only book by him on the top 1000 list. I think I do have a copy of it somewhere. But anyway, I have also never seen the film 2000, or is it 2001 A Space Odyssey? Did I say 2010 or did I say 2001? Because I think it's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Anyway, really stoked to get a signed book by him. One of the masters of science fiction. Super exciting. Glad to have it, and I only paid $15 for it. And all these other books I got for free. So I'd say that's a steal. Anyway, that will do it for this video. So thank you guys for watching. Have you read any of these books? What do you think? Have you read 2001 A Space Odyssey? I definitely need to give it a try, and I need to try the movie. I've never seen the movie. I know the movie with made by Stanley Kubrick is regarded as one of the most influential movies of all time. And I think Arthur C. Clarke wrote the book 2001 A Space Odyssey while they were making the movie. And I think potentially the movie came out first. And there's also some key differences between the book and the movie. But anyway, so that is it for the book haul. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in another video. Bye. 2, 3, 4.